Welcome to The Explainer. What happens after a decisive victory? When the dust settles? For the early Muslims, the fall of Khaibar wasn't just the end of a battle. It was really the beginning of a new world. So today, we're going to dive into how this one pivotal moment reshaped an entire society, from its laws all the way down to its very heart. You see this right here? A clear conquest. That's what the Quran calls it. And for the early Muslims, the fall of Khaibar's impenetrable fortresses, this was exactly that. This was so much more than just a military victory. It was the fulfillment of a divine promise. It was a clear, unmistakable sign that set the stage for absolutely everything that followed. But, this clear conquest wasn't only about divine intervention. It was also about some truly brilliant human strategy. So let's kick things off with a fascinating story that shows just how clever the early Muslims had to be. It's an incredible tale of wit, risk, and some very calculated disinformation. So just imagine this for a second. There's this guy, Al-Hajjaj, and he's got all this wealth that's rightfully his. The problem? It's trapped right in the heart of enemy territory, in Makkah. A direct approach? That's basically a suicide mission. So what do? Well, you come up with a plan so audacious it just might work. A plan that's all about flipping the Quraishis' expectations completely on their head. So his plan was this brilliant three-step gambit. First up, the lie. He just waltzes into Makkah and announces this devastating Muslim defeat at Khaibar. Step 2, while the Quraysh are partying and celebrating, he quietly goes around and collects all his money. And then step 3, the getaway. He gets out of there before anyone even figures out they've been played. It was a total masterclass in psychological warfare. And wow, just think about the emotional whiplash this created. For 3 whole days, the small group of Muslims back in Makkah were just plunged into despair. But here's the thing. That temporary sadness was the price they had to pay for a much, much bigger win. Because when Al-Hajjaj finally came back, all that sorrow just exploded into elation, and their faith, well, it was stronger than ever. It's such a powerful lesson in seeing the bigger picture, right? Okay, so Khaibar wasn't just about clever tactics and military power. Not at all. Once the conflict was over, the real work started, and that was building a new society. The focus totally shifted from warfare to, statecraft. It wasn't just about conquering land anymore. It was about establishing a just and ethical nation on that land. So what was the first order of business? Economic justice. The Prophet immediately banned something called al-fadl usury, which was a practice just ripe for exploitation. The example from the sources is just brilliant. Instead of trading, say, 1 basket of your really good dates for 2 baskets of someone's not-so-good dates, he said, nope, sell the bad dates for cash first, then use that cash to buy the good dates. It's such a simple, elegant solution, and it makes everything transparent and fair. This wasn't just some random rule. It was a huge statement about the kind of economy this new society was going to have. And then next up was another pretty radical economic reform, sharecropping, or el-musakat. Now think about this. With all of Khaibar's huge farmlands now under Muslim control, the Prophet could have just taken everything, right? But he didn't. Instead, he set up a partnership. He told the Jewish farmers they could keep working the land, and in return, they'd get to keep half of everything they grew. This wasn't about conquest in the typical sense. This was a whole new model of coexistence and making sure everyone benefited. And it wasn't just about these big economic ideas either. The new rules trickled all the way down to everyday life, literally, right down to what was on the dinner table. On the very same day as the victory, a new rule came out. Horse meat was now okay to eat, but the meat of domesticated donkeys was forbidden. And what's just amazing is how the companions adopted these changes instantly, like right away. It just goes to show you how eager this community was to build a whole new life based on clear, divine guidance. And this verse, right here, it just perfectly captures the whole spirit of the time. It didn't matter if it was about trade or farming or even what you ate. The community just got it. True success was all about following the Prophet's guidance. It was a very conscious choice they were making, to build their entire society on this foundation of divine justice and clarity. But look, a just society is more than just a list of rules and economic policies, right? It's really about the character of its leaders. And there's this one incredible story from the aftermath of Khaibar that really shows us the kind of compassionate leadership that would truly define this new era. So let's really think about that. What defines a truly great leader when faced with someone's personal crisis? This story gives us such a powerful answer. And it takes us away from the grand scale of battlefields and marketplaces right into a deeply personal, quiet, and compassionate moment between the prophet and a young woman.
Okay, so try to picture the scene. You have this young woman, and she's riding on the very same camel as the prophet, as part of this huge triumphant procession back from victory. And then right there, in that incredibly public moment, she gets her first period. I mean, the embarrassment, the shame, especially in that culture at that time, it would have just been overwhelming.
Now, this is where the story takes a turn. Because instead of judgment or anger, which she was probably expecting, the prophet responds with just gentle concern. He doesn't dismiss her at all. He teaches her. He gives her this really practical, dignified advice. And in doing so, he turns what could have been a moment of total humiliation into a calm, empowering lesson. It's just an incredible display of empathy and true leadership. But wait, the story doesn't even end there. The prophet then takes a necklace, one of the spoils of war, and places it around her neck himself. And so that necklace, which was a symbol of this huge public victory, it became a personal symbol of his mercy to her. And she wore it for the rest of her life, a constant reminder of that moment when a great leader met her personal shame with incredible kindness. And this is what the Quran means when it talks about the excellent pattern. It's not just about winning battles. It's not just about making laws. It's about this right here. A leader who can blend that public strength with private tenderness, who can mix authority with profound compassion. That is the kind of leadership that builds a civilization. Okay, so what happens when you put all of that together? You've got a military victory, a just economy, and compassionate leadership. Well, what you get is a seismic shift in the entire geopolitical landscape. So let's zoom out now and see how the events at Khaibar literally redrew the map of Arabia. Look, Khaibar wasn't just another victory. It was the tipping point. The Quraish in Makkah, who were once the undisputed power in Arabia, were suddenly isolated and really vulnerable. Their allies, they could see which way the wind was blowing, so they started abandoning them and making peace deals with the Muslims instead. And at the same time, the Muslim economy, now flush with the wealth of Khaibar, became a serious force to be reckoned with. The old world was crumbling, and a new one was rising in its place. So in the end, you see, the fall of Khaibar was so much more than the end of a battle. It was the birth of a whole new kind of civilization, one that wasn't just built on brute force, but on justice, on compassion, and on faith. And that really leaves us with a powerful question to think about. What is the true measure of any victory? Is it just the battles we win, or is it the world we choose to build in their aftermath?